Let's see, introductions. First things first, my name is Pyrope. I am a former Commodore and now Rear Admiral in nebulous Fleet Command. I play this game a little bit. Like, last I checked, I have like 1,800 hours and some change in the game. So, you know, I play this game sometimes. And I've been playing a lot of Railguns. Um, I started playing Railguns because they seemed like safe and something I could handle, and just kind of grew from there as I learned different tricks and like different things and like how to contribute to my team and whatnot. I actually got to the top spot on the nebulous kill board for a bit with my real DD fleet called the Four Maidens. Basically, there's 4 real DDs that have guns on them. Um, but yeah, that's me. That's my credentials. I'm a person. All right. Um, Railguns and nebulous. First, I'm going to talk about railguns. Then I'll talk about mass drivers. I'll talk about railguns first because there's more to them than railguns because there's only like one mass driver gun, but there's like 2 railgun guns. Uh, so yeah, for ANS, the railgun is the long-range support tool, the sniper gun that they have. It is not very good at killing things on its own, but when combined with other tools or when working with a team, it can be a powerful tool to control firing lanes and supplement the damage of allies and support them from across the map. Um, First, we'll talk about the Keystone railgun first because it's sort of like the standard quote-unquote railgun. The Spinal Mark 50 550 railgun is basically the rapid fire sort of like quote unquote better railgun to where it has like a higher rate of fire, has a slightly tighter spread, and while it does cost more points, it has like a hole basically dedicated to it with like an innate power bonus and everything. That being said, you still have to pay for the whole hole to mount it, and once you mount a railgun on a Keystone, it kind of becomes its main thing. So that's one of the like downsides of a railgun is like if you go for like the spinal option with the DD, like you have to pay for the whole DD, and that means you have to keep the destroyer alive somehow, whether that be through putting in some soft kills, some point defense, whatever it takes to like not have the odd missile or the odd shuttle come in and kill it. Yeah. There's always the option to just not do any of that, but even if you don't do any of that, you're still paying like 300 some odd points for a railgun. And if you don't buff it at all, the fire rate is kind of meh. But that being said, the primary way to use these railguns is to control the firing lanes on a map. So take Nyx's Eye, for example. Nyx's Eye sort of has like 4 main corridors. There's the side of the donut around B, the inner side of the donut around A rock, and then the same for on the other side of A, and then Delta. When you're playing railguns, like up high or way down low, you can only really cover like 2 of those lanes at a time, maybe 3 if you position really, really well. But positioned right, you can make it so that the enemy has to dive behind cover, slow their advance to like a capture point, and give your team time to react. Now, that being said, you need to find a way to get targets. A good sniper always has ways to.
Speaking
How's it
of,
going?
I do have a question. Will you be
It's
going
going well.
over counter railgun gameplay? Because there's been a few times where I've run rails, and then they were also running rails, and then it was a bit of a rail fest from there.
Sure, I can cover that later. Um, like first, I'm trying to cover like how to get targets with railguns. But like how to fight railguns, we can definitely talk about that here in a bit. All right, so first things first. I think the best way to show this is to like build a rail fleet from scratch, and kind of show you all like how to build it as we go along. All right, so first you need your destroyer, of course. Like I usually go with either reinforced or basic CIC, but here. It'd be better if I pull up one I've already made. I'll pull up that fleet I mentioned earlier, actually. Okay. And then Neko, do you have like your fleets for me to shoot at here in a sec?
Yep. Target practice standing by. You want me to host lobby?
Okay, yeah, yep. All right. Um, uh, wait to hold the lobby. Let me just show this really quick. Okay, so this is the rail duty fleet that I use. Basically, you got your point defense and your guns. The idea being that later on in the game, when you like disable a ship with railguns and cause all kinds of fires, you can close in and finish them off with these 250s, or you can like defend yourself against the out shuttle rushing you. It lets you like be more active in the game besides just being railguns, because one of the things I want to talk about is how railgun fleets need to be more than just railguns. Um, so like usually when I build a fleet that has rails in it, I try to include like capping or spotting or some sort of like fighting capability, something that I can bring to the team besides just like shooting with support weapons from 20 kilometers away. Because if the enemy team masks from you, or they find ways to get to the capture points and get behind them, to where like your railguns can't hit them anymore, then your team is basically down like 3k points, unless you like bring something else to the table. Like for finding targets here, I have this correlated spyglass DD. As you might have seen in the chat talking about this, if you put about 4 track correlators on a spyglass, you can get a positional error of about 22.5 meters, which is better than a parallax without the lock. And so like this allows you to shoot at long range, like 11.5 kilometers, and basically have really reliable accuracy with your railguns and your DDs, your Mark 64s rather, 250s, 120s, you name it. This is a concept that I kept in the Task Force Redwood fleet that I made. So TF Redwood is a fleet that's like in the game now, and it's for everyone. Loaded right into the vanilla of Nebulous. And there is like these 2 scout corvettes, which is how I made this fleet be able to find targets. The bullseyes allow you to get locks for the destroyer, so you don't have to rely on your allies to get targets for you, because if you're just totally relying on your allies to get targets, then you can't really choose what you're going to be able to shoot, and the odds of like the available targets be things you don't actually have angles on are relatively high. But with this, you can control like what you can shoot and also find where the enemies are with these like pinards that I have here on these 2 sprinters. These sprinters basically allow the railgun destroyers to do their work. And without them, you just kind of have a rail array sitting in space with no way to like actually find what it needs to shoot. That is why these sprinters are helpful, and also they can cap points. So that's another thing that like a rail array can do, is that if you have a support fleet, be it mass drivers, railguns, even like mines, you want to like usually have some like shuttles or whatnot or sprinters to go out and cap points, because while you're playing railguns, it's going to be up to your team to finish off targets, and so anything you can do to make that easier for them will help you win the game. So if you're taking care of the objectives and finding targets, then your allies can go off and kill things and not have to worry too much, and it helps you like have the synergy with your team. Let's see. And let's see. Next, I want to talk about like the specific stats of railguns. So, if we were to like look at like a base railgun destroyer, we would see that, oh, not that one. We would see that a railgun has about 23 meters of spread at 10 kilometers, fire rate of 15, rate of fire with the hidden stats mod that I have is 4 rounds per minute. With like 2 E-regs, that fire rate goes up by over 50%. Goes from like 4 rounds per minute to 6.5 rounds per minute. And so with a point investment of like 60 points, you can basically increase your fire rate by over 50%. So it's like a big return. And that's one of the things I want to point out. We look at this thing here, this handy dandy infographic that Small Cake made me, because she's awesome. It compares the big railgun on the destroyer with the railgun turret they can put on a capital. The railgun here on the destroyer, it requires heavy investment to either protect the hull or offset the cost, because otherwise you're paying, like I said, like over 300 points for like a single railgun, and that's not really efficient or effective. So you want to put in like as many E-regs as you can to like, do the rail gunning and then whatever else you want it to do. So like a maxed out E-reg destroyer here has like some kind of insane fire rate, like 10.5 rounds per minute. That's like 162% extra rate of fire. And it's like 100 and some change points past like the base cost of the Rail DD. So you definitely want to buff up your railgun destroyers when you can. But that being said, railguns in like a Axford, for instance, are much better as like secondary weapons, because you can have them and say like you put a railgun back here and some cannons up here. The railgun will help out the cannons by doing like 2 things. The rail sabo is first like really hard to dodge, so if you're against like a bow tanking a solo, they're not going to be able to dodge like railgun very well, and they're going to take it right down the nose. And not only will that cause some good chip damage to the components inside and start some fires, but it'll also knock out the thrusters, because importantly, railguns can defeat the DT of thrusters on like any ship OSP has. So those front three thrusters on the Acello will get blown out by the railguns, and then that stops the Acello from being able to like dodge as effectively. So the 450s can hit a lot better, and you can start hitting them with 450 AP.
Real quick, sorry. We have a question about the Keystone railguns. Which engine type do you think is best for that?
For engine, I usually go with a Dragonfly drive. The Dragonfly allows the DD to make the big turns, like if you have to like turn like 90 degrees to like look at a target over there, the Dragonfly will get you on target a lot faster. It does make you a bit slower, so it's a bit harder to reposition, but you're able to change targets more easily from your current position, wherever that may be. In the fleet I was showing earlier, the Four Maidens fleet, I actually have double drives on these rail DDs. I have Dragonfly and Whiplash because since these are like quote unquote battle rails with 250 cannons and stonewalls, they want to sometimes close in and get into the fight when it's safe to do so, because these things can put out quite a bit of damage, but they can't really take it in return. So the Whiplash helps them like get in there and like choose the engagements they want and apply the 250s when they need to. It also helps them reposition so you can get to different angles on the map and control different firing lanes. Overall, I would recommend just like a regular old Dragonfly drive, because that lets you put in a big reactor, which lets you put in way more E-regs. The double drive setup is kind of a niche setup for battle rails, I would say. But yeah, for a more traditional railgun fleet like a Task Force Redwood, yeah, the dragonfly is usually sufficient. Um, let's see. So, all right, Neko,
Hello.
this is the part where I hurt you.
All right. I've got a lobby set up. Password's 123.
Okay, cool. Um, this one, Pyrope. Are you sure it's the right one?
Might not be. I don't know. Nice new emblem, by the way. Rear Admiral. Good logo.
Thank you. I have a hexagon. All right, I'm gonna just bring out Task Force Redwood. Would you mind
Alright.
changing the map to, let's say Abyssal?
Abyssal. All right. Abyssal loaded up. Ready when you
Yeah.
are.
All right, and bring some Acellos.
Acellos on their way. You want one or two?
Two.
Two Acellos coming up. Ready when you are.
Okay. All right, and let's see. Would you mind sharing your screens so that people can see what it looks like from the Acellos perspective?
Sure. I will try and do that. You just have to hop between because I'm re-hosting your stream onto my stream, which is a little interesting, but
Yeah. Uh, okay. Let's see here. I'll just put them right in the middle. I'm gonna go high with my railguns. Um, so yeah, just go ahead and put yourself wherever. I'm gonna see how quickly I can find you.
The host could use the timescale command possibly to speed this up.
Okay.
shouldn't take
Um,
too long. I don't know
if
if I've got
necessary.
timescale bound here or not, but
all right. How do I
Abyssal's
do
also
that?
pretty small, so
Can only the host do
It
that?
would need to be the host.
Okay. Do you know how, Neko?
If you
sorry,
press,
repeat last, please.
Do you know how to do the time thingy?
Timescale, I think I have to bind that
no,
somewhere,
so
or
you just press F2, and then you and then you type time dash scale space and then whatever the multiplier you want, so like 2 or 4, and then press enter. And then you can do that same process but do timescale 1 when you want to set it back to normal.
Okay, so now we're going super
okay,
fast.
we should be on 4 times speed here.
Okay, so yeah, as you can see, I set heading and roll orders on my sprinters here to make sure the elant is pointing down. That way I can see everything below me because elant only looks at the hemisphere on which it's mounted. So see right here, I've got a search track, elant crossfix, and so if I try locking that, I've already got a bullseye lock right off the elant crossfix because you can lock elant crossfixes just fine. And see, I've got both of Neko's solos locked here.
If you look at my screen, I've had to burn through one of my cells, and I do see a ping here, but I don't see anything else besides that.
Yeah. All right, do you want to put it back to normal speed, Neko?
Sure, just 1 second.
Yeah, so as you can see, I was able to locate and lock the Acellos before they even knew I was there, thanks to how small sprinters are. Okay, we're on normal speed?
Yep, we are. Just confirmed it.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to have my rail DDs turn around, and I'm going to have them start railing the tuna melt. Like, go ahead and show them what the, oops, lost ya. Yeah, go ahead and show them what the, DC board looks like. That's the word.
All right, I've got the DC board pulled up here. As you can see, I have multiple walkers all about the ship, just standing by. Nothing has hit me yet, but
There we go.
now we hear a lock on, and we're going to see just what happens in a second once those rails get bearing and fire on us.
Yep. Uh, okay. Alright, so these railguns are turning around.
Standing by. Repositioning. Aye aye, full burn.
Right. So let's see. Rails out. Neko. Could you use the command console to disable the visibility matrix?
Yes. What's that command again? It's full set
Alright.
something.
It's dbg sus, and then just press tab,
Yeah.
and then
D
type space true, and that should work.
yeah. DVG suspend visibility true. Should work.
I can only do that in single player apparently.
Oh damn.
Oh, okay.
Mazer's
Alright.
too good. Mazer's prevented cheats.
Yeah. Anyways,
Okay.
if anyone, okay, so apparently my stream audio is borked, but I'm hoping you can all see in the chat here. You'll see my ship is now taking a lot of fire, and various things are broken out across it that are taxing my DC teams a lot.
Yeah. And then have any of the thrusters been blown out yet?
Not yet, but you are yellowing a lot of things. Do note that I'm
Gotcha.
not bow on to you, so it is getting spread fire.
Okay. Here, I'm gonna cease fire. Try to get bow on to me.
All right, let me just rotate and bear. You're roughly on the C point, right?
You might, Neko, you might also want
yeah.
to flank speed, because usually people always start flank speeding at all times.
That is true.
I'll go right here on Charlie, so that you can just aim your
I'll just
nose
point my
at Charlie.
cellos towards Charlie and go with that.
Okay. Yeah. Try to do some damage control. Keep yourself alive for a bit.
Yep. Nothing essential's really been booped yet. Just a couple fires across the ship, atmosphere leak and whatnot.
Okay.
You want to talk about the railgun penetration and how it goes through multiple compartments?
Yeah. Okay. So, Railgun Sabo, it says it does 80 damage in the game, but Railgun also always counts as overpenning even when it doesn't. So, Rail Sabo only does 40 damage when it hits because it has a 0.5 overpen multiplier. However, Railgun is special in that it does 40 damage to the first part hit, then half that to the next part hit, and then half that and so on. So basically, like, the first 4 components hit take 40, 20, 10, and then 5 damage respectively. So that 40 damage, as well as like all subsequent instances of damage, all of that ignores DR. So you know how cellos have like 30% DR, bulk freighters have like 35% DR, Exfords and Solomons have 40% DR. None of that matters for railguns. So any part, be it like a compartment, module, mount, anything that has a damage threshold of less than 40 can be grayed out by railguns. So that includes not only thrusters, but like non-reinforced DC lockers, like ammo elevators, mount gyros, like pretty much any kind of buff module. I believe reinforced mags only have 35 DT as well, so reinforced mags can technically be knocked out by railguns as well. However, due to the reinforced tag, it has to be hit basically twice while at 0% HP to be knocked out. So you basically have to get them not repairing the reinforced mag to grade out. But it is possible. Especially if you have like a bunch of conditions like elsewhere that the DC teams have to take care of. So you point your nose at a Bravo, Nico?
Yeah, Charlie rather.
Charlie. Yeah. All right. There you go. So I'm going to start shooting you again. With your solo bow on, this will reflect what the secondary railgun on like an Axford or Solomon does. Speaking of Axfords or Solomons, you don't want railguns to be your primary armament because the railgun turret just has less fire rate overall and is just not as efficient to invest into as the spinal railgun. However, since you can mount it on a Axford or Solomon, you can combine that with 450 cannons or some other armament and take advantage of the accurate fire that railguns give you in order to like knock out thrusters so that you can get your 450s to hit better, cause like fires and conditions so that the damage you cause with your 450s can't be repaired as quickly or as easily, and will allow you to take down ships much faster than you would be able to by just shooting 450 at it. So
Okay, so
yeah.
my audio is kind of borked right now, but you should all be able to see my DC board taking a bunch of hits here in the front, especially where I've got my components in the nose of the SL. We all know how lovely those are when they get booped.
Yeah. So, provided these railgun shots are hitting your nose thrusters, they will be grayed out as soon as I get them to 0 HP and hit them. Just
So you'll notice here, most of my bow thrusters have been taken out, the antenna as well, ammo elevators, everything in the front just getting whacked.
yeah. So yeah, contrary to popular belief, railguns can gray out components. It just has to be the right components and parts. Antennas and thrusters are some of those parts.
You might notice also the reinforced lockers here getting critted out and heavily taxing my DC team, so there's fire, atmosphere leak. Making sure that your DC teams are on the right modules is important, but just taxing the entire ship and exhausting all of them is equally important for your enemies to do, because once your components are redded out, we all know how soon it is for 450s to start flying and knocking out all your important things.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So yeah, how's the tuna melt feeling?
Pretty bad. Also worth noting, you've knocked out all the DC lockers in the front of the ship, which are reinforced.
Someone's asking how much damage does fire do?
That's a good question. I was meaning to talk about that at some point. So, fires do. Let me check my notes. One sec. Where'd my phone go? My phone is somewhere around here.
I believe it is 10% of the component's health every 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's. I think is it every
It's
30
either 30
seconds?
seconds or a minute. Either way, it does regular tick intervals, and it's a lot of chip damage that can add up. More fire is better in that case.
And
Okay.
importantly, it scales with the health module. So if you got a fire on a really big, chunky module, then it does a lot of damage.
Yeah. Okay, here. All right, there you go. All right, so let me check my phone here, and I can give you an exact answer.
Neko, I would say you could stop flanking now, because at this point, if I'm like an Acela player that's getting shot up by railguns like this, would stop flanking to.
I was trying to
save
replicate
your DC team.
that moment where you set flank and try and burn for cover, but there's not really any cover to burn for. I was also trying to see
Yeah.
just how fast you can get. So you may note we got 57 thruster power, and I was peaking at like 25-ish there after having to use my main thrusters. Now we see us trying to maneuver, and we're getting basically nothing going laterally. Like, we look at our heading here, it's just crawling along. So once you start getting railed, you have to find cover very fast, otherwise you're going to get stuck and sandbagged.
As well as you should probably also stop putting your heading towards what are the railguns, and instead, keep your heading away, so that way you don't get bowed on hits.
Yep.
Yeah,
There's a time to bow tank, and there's a time to broadside. Bow tanking against rails will get you killed.
yeah, you don't want to bow tank against railguns if you can help it, because the railguns will like get the most damage that way. If you put your broadside to it, each railgun table will probably only hit like one or two things, so it'll do a lot less damage overall. Let me just check my pins here. Man, I really love how they updated the mobile UI for Discord. There we go.
Another thing to talk
Okay,
about in terms of
I found
critical
it.
hits while we have a moment. Oh, you got it? Okay.
Yeah, so every 30 seconds, fires deal 5% of the component's max HP as damage, with 10% crew vulnerability modifier. So basically, fires can kill DC teams, and if you keep railgunning a target and you keep making the DC teams work inside fires, eventually those DC teams will literally burn to death. That does take a while, but it is something to keep in mind that you will degrade the damage control of a ship over time just by nature of railgunning it and having the DC teams die in fires. And yeah, since it does about 5% of the component's damage every 30 seconds, that usually won't break the DT of anything, but it can definitely write out things and put into 0% after a little bit. And then also, I know that I think every 25 seconds. Here, let me look here. Aha! Every 45 seconds, fires have a 25% chance to spread to a component within 12.5 meters within the ship. So, the more fires you keep inside a ship, the more those fires will spread, and pretty soon everything inside that ship will be on fire. Pretty much. So you will burn down the whole ship from top to bottom if you just keep railgunning it, even if you just keep hitting the same place over and over and over again.
You should also realize another thing is that when you're hitting components, even though you may not kill them, like in certain like reinforced components, but things like reactors can get catastrophed. If you would like to go into that more.
Yeah.
I've currently got a reactor cooking off in about 50 seconds, so.
Yeah, so on that note, railguns themselves cannot cause catastrophic events. They have basically like a negative modifier to do so. So railgun stable itself will never ever cause a reactor overload or a fuel line fire. However, the fires that railguns cause can cause those catastrophic events, and the lower HP a component has, the more likely it is to suffer a catastrophic event. So the more you railgun a ship, the more likely the fires will cause like a reactor overload or a fuel line fire, and eventually you'll just kill a ship that way. So after a while, railguns can kill a ship. So even though they're a support tool, they can kill something after a while. But mainly they're to disable ships so that your allies can finish them off. Or in
Adding
this
on to
case,
that, the railgun criticals are very effective at causing drive and reactor overloads because when you stack on fire, atmosphere leaks, and all these other debuffs, you're dealing with DC teams having like a negative 68.43% work speed, which when you've only got like 2 minutes to fix a crit that's going to otherwise cook your ship, that's a very, very big difference.
yeah, that's right. And so if you have a fuel line fire in the middle of being railgunned, there's like no way you can fix that. You have just too many debuffs, and the ship's gonna go up in flames.
Yeah, if you're sitting in railgun fire and you get, you're probably going to have a fuel line fire, reactor overload, magazine detonation. You're going to have a million of those over time. Eventually, if they didn't get knocked out completely, which your DC teams just can't deal with.
Yeah.
Which is not fun, and all three of those catastrophes can just knock out your ship completely. I believe magazine detonations are the least deadly because of how I believe they do damage in the area around them. But usually you have your magazines next to your CICs, so that could just lead to you dying right there. Fuel line fires, if I remember correctly, do damage to the entirety of the ship, and then reactor detonations are reactor detonations. Your ship is just gone.
Yep. And a giant ball of nuclear plasma.
It's worth noting, once this ball starts rolling, it's very hard to stop. For the past, 4 minutes or so of sustained railfire, my CIC has been at 0. I've got a repair team in there trying to fix everything, but I just have a ship here that is going to basically sit here until the reactor or drive cooks off, and then I don't have any DC teams left to fix it. So if you don't get out of railfire, you will die, and you have to deal with the ramp up. At first, 1 or 2 rails, not a problem, but once you get sustained fire really ramped up and everything on your ship is taxed, you are screwed.
Yep, and if you want to, once you get an enemy ship to this point to where it's like not under command and it's like just unconscious after being railgunned so much, and you want to switch targets, you can keep that ship suppressed just by having one of your railguns continue to shoot at it, but then like shooting at like a different target with your other railguns. So if I start shooting at the salmon salad here, then one railgun will continue suppressing the tuna melt and keeping its stuff at 0%, while the other railguns tasked to a new target. Yeah. Let's see. I've got an idea. Hey, Neko.
Ready and willing.
Let's get some like a real combat footage in here.
All right, you want me to come try and kill you?
Just one moment. Let me fix the formation. So I'll fight the salmon salad.
All right, burning towards you.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let's do this. Try and kill me. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm engaging in a firefight with battle rails. That's rails that have like 250 or 120 millimeter cannons. I want to set the formation to evade because evading will really help me stay alive because, like I said before, these destroyers, they can dish out damage, but they can't take it. Even if you give them damage control, destroyers are just too squishy. They have too thin armor and the too little DR to really be able to handle getting shot at. So I have this a solo here, the salmon salad coming at me. I have a parallax here in one of my battle rails here to allow me to get targets for my railguns, even when I don't have a scout in the area. This will allow me to survive and see stuff coming, even when I don't have a scout nearby, and I can take on shuttles or tugboats that try to rush me and prevent myself getting assassinated. So with the evade command on here, my ships are making basically random movements to try and throw off gunfire. And as I'm railgunning the salmon salad more and more, those guns are going to start taking little conditions that reduce their effectiveness and their accuracy. So the more I shoot him, the less he's able to shoot me. And once he gets close enough, I'm going to have 250s coming at him.
You can see me attempting to present more of a broadside, trying to spread some of that rail fire away and not drive down my nose, but...
If you're playing in a bulker, you just kind of have to hope they don't hit your reactors or your drives, as in a bulker, you're just kind of fucked if they do. Main bus
speaking of
shorts.
bulkers, do we want to talk about rails hitting empty space?
Yes. So when railguns hit empty space, they will still cause at least one critical in the ship they shoot. So even if they don't actually hit anything to cause, 40 damage or fractions thereof, it'll still pick the nearest component to the part of the ship it hit to give it a critical condition, like atmosphere leak, fire, main bush short, all that stuff. So even against bulkers, you can still stack up the fires and conditions. Even if you're not hitting anything in particular. And eventually, since bulkers are so wide, you will tax the DC teams and make them unable to fight back effectively.
Yep. Would you like to go over targeting priority with railguns? Over what ships on the OSB fleet would be, what you should be hitting first if you get the chance?
Yeah. So when you're playing railguns, first and foremost, the thing you want to hit more than anything is Acellos, because Acellos are this basically multi-goal ship in that they have good radars that can be knocked out with railguns. That railguns can break the DT on radar panels. They rely heavily on power generation, so main bus shorts really affect them, make them unable to run their radars and their point defense turrets. As well, Acellos, while normally tanky, heavily armored, and able to bow tank really well, can't do any of that versus railguns. And they have a bunch of tightly packed components that will take a lot of damage from the railguns as they impale the ship and spread their damage.
Oh, also, I should note, evade isn't technically as efficient as the orbit command for dodging.
While stationary, yes. Your ships with evade command, you can just set them up and they will automatically kind of wiggle around, making it hard to hit. You may notice I've been firing 450 this entire time at one of your keystones. I don't think I've gotten many hits on it.
Yeah, you've only gotten a few hits on the central DD. And even so, I'm within 250 range now, and I'm pelting you with 250s, 250 AP, and railguns while avoiding most of your 450 fire. How many conditions are on your 450s, by the way?
Let's see. We got some recycle time, reload time increases. The really big one is the spread, because I've got an extra 75% spread on one of my guns, and that just means I'm not going to hit you, because the destroyer is already pretty small, and if you can stay at range.
Yeah, exactly.
Dodging is infinitely easier at longer ranges.
Yep. So I've closed to about 5.5 kilometers now, so Neko should be able to hit me with 450s a lot more easily, even with debuffs. However, he's taken so much damage that his Acello is not looking too good.
We have a question. Is combining rails and missiles a good idea to take advantage of bus shorts shutting down PD?
It can be. However, do note that ships will automatically prioritize point defense turrets over practically everything else. So as long as the ship can still run its radar and its point defense, it'll still be able to like shoot its auroras and whatnot. However, that can make it so that while the ship is shooting its point defense guns, it won't have any of its buff modules active or be able to shoot any of its other guns. Like, it'll basically force the turret to either have its PD going or like nothing going at all. So yeah, it can work, but only if you can reduce the power generation to the point where the ship can't run its radar or point defense turrets anymore.
It'd be a good idea to coordinate with your missile player, as if you're running railguns, you most likely don't have missiles of your own. To coordinate strikes with your missile player, telling them, hey, it's been a few minutes of me firing railguns, you should probably try sending a salvo at the track number.
Yep. Once you sufficiently railgun an Ocello, like you could see with the Atuna Melt over here, like even though I've left it alone for a while, according to my intel, it still has like 33 conditions in it. That's what that little number in parentheses is, by the way.
Got like 33 disabled and destroyed, and then just in terms of other events going off, got like 27 of them going, just fires, atmosphere leaks everywhere across the ship.
Yeah, that little number in parentheses there is how many conditions that your intel thinks that the enemy ship has. So it's still, this Ocello is still suffering even like 5 minutes later. And so like once you like sufficiently railgun a target, you can start sending missiles down the way, and you've either knocked out their point defense turrets just with damage, or you've like given them so many debuffs that they can't really use them effectively anymore. So yeah, it's a good idea to coordinate with your missile friend to say like, hey, like I've been railgunning this guy for a few minutes. You can probably send some missiles down the way.
Also, there was a mention earlier of like good targets for railguns. I think you talked about Ocellos.
Yep.
But on the flip side, the monitors are also pretty good because they also have very packed together module components, which are likely to take a bunch like one railgun hit is likely to hit a bunch of components in succession. But then on the flip side, you kind of don't really want to target bulkers all that much because they are very large and very spread out. So with your railgun, you're only probably going to hit like one module with each shot.
So for target priority, I would say Ocellos first, monitors second, especially the new monitors, since monitors have more armor now, and their components are so densely packed. Like, monitors are really juicy targets for railguns now. And then following that, I would actually put bulk freighters third, because even though you probably aren't getting a lot of component damage on a bulker with railguns, you're still stacking up the conditions, and those fires will hurt them. Especially with how big bulk freighters are, it takes a long time for DC teams to get around. So you can basically stack the damage with fires instead of component damage against bulkers.
Does priority change depending on the bulk freighter's weapons? Let's say 450s opposed to mass driver bulkers.
Yes, so anytime you can counter battery mass drivers, you should. Mass drivers hate being railgunned because it not only like gives them main bus shorts that makes it harder for them to run their railguns, but it also makes it so that they get a bunch of debuffs on their mass drivers, and a sniper stops being a sniper once you bend the barrel sideways. And so like once you get a bunch of those like spread debuffs and like recharge speed debuffs, like the mass driver suddenly stops being able to hit targets. And if the mass driver can't shoot you back, you can just take it out. Eventually, like all those fires will burn down the mass driver, make it unable to shoot its mass drivers anymore. And eventually those fires will cause a critical event, especially in a mass driver bulker, which is most likely running a boosted reactor. That boosted reactor now has a 25% catastrophic event chance. That's 2.5 times the chance it had before the patch today. So fires in boosted reactors have a very significant chance of causing those fuel line fires and reactor overloads. And so you can actually dispatch a mass driver bulker in a fairly reasonable fashion and speed if you manage to railgun it enough. And these little scouts here, these little sprinters, are how you find the mass drivers, get them on track, get them locked, and then railgun them before they even know what's happening to them. 450 bulkers also suffer from those gun debuffs, making it hard for them to hit anything at the ranges they like to be at. So, like, 450 Bulker at 9 kilometers away isn't going to hit anything with, like, fully debuffed guns. They might get a few lucky hits, but yeah. I would say definitely prioritize enemy mass drivers when you can.
You can think of it this way. Think of a ship and decide, okay, if this thing is facing towards me, how much of it can I go stem to stern with? Because a railgun can penetrate through multiple compartments, inflicting many crits along the way. You also have to consider, does this thing have a lot of power? An Acela with double boosted reactors is going to be hit very hard by getting those debuffs applying a negative 50%. So you can easily tax all of the power from an Acelo that's meant for Aurora point defense or a mass driver liner that's trying to shell you from, say, a relatively safe 18 kilometers. Most of the time, if you're running mass drivers, you're not going to be anywhere near something that can shoot back at you because why would you be? Railguns are the counter to that.
Yeah, I would say that hybrids are also a really good counter to mass drivers. Because unless the mass drivers have a bunch of AMMs, they're probably going to eat the hybrids unless they soft kill them. Since ANS still has access to EO, EO can be a really good way to find a mass driver bulkers because they often don't have radars of their own, so ARAD won't work. And if they carry chaff, then active seekers won't work, especially if they aren't burning their drives for wake validation. So EO or EO validation can be a good way to find mass drivers with hybrid missiles.
To answer a question to how to deal with missile spam on rails and MDs, I don't do ANS too much, so Pyrope you can handle the rails, but for mass drivers, you just have to bring a lot of AMMs. And if you get focused by the missile player, there's not truly much you can do. I'm sorry to say. Missiles are the counter to MDs besides the rails.
Yeah, like if you're mass drivers, like you can have like a friend who has an Acelo come screen you, do teamwork. AMMs like I believe Ion mentioned, but that'll only take you so far. Your best bet against missiles as mass drivers is to just be out of range of the missiles or just not be known. As long as they don't know where you are, they can't hit you with missiles.
One thing with from all missile players who might be in here, always be careful when firing at what you think are bulkers, as a lot of times, especially like me, mass drivers may have container banks that hold decoy containers. Decoy containers just look like normal mass drivers, look like normal line ships from afar. Especially if you don't have an intel center who can spot them easy.
Yep. It's also worth noting that EO will ignore decoy containers. So if you are the missile player, like that's another reason for EO is that decoy containers won't fool your seeker.
Yep. And if you are the mass driver player, you should always be bringing liner decoys if you can fit them onto your mass driver ships. They're just an extremely useful tool that you should learn how to use, as they help protect you against usually all normal missiles except EO.
Yeah. And also as the mass driver player, something you can do is bring like a dazzler on like a bloodhound tug or something. If you have a dazzler, you can defeat any EO missiles coming at you. So that can be some counterplay you can do like as the mass driver player. So there's a lot of like checks and balances and things you can do on both sides of the equation.
And then they asked how to deal with missile spam on the rails for ANS. This will be up to you. I'm not good at ANS, PD.
All right, so as you can see on these rail DDs, I have 2 stone walls on either side of the destroyers to handle like S2s and decoys. And then on the chin of each destroyer is a defender to take down like containers. So stone walls will get rid of the decoys, and then the defenders will clean up the containers. Now obviously this isn't foolproof, which is why every single destroyer has a bunch of these like active decoys and like chaff they can put out. So yeah, like soft kill is a great way to survive having missiles come at you, because if you manage to like soft kill enemy missiles, you don't even have to worry about hard killing them. They'll just fly off and not hit you. Now soft kill isn't foolproof either. Sometimes missiles.
Sorry to interrupt. You just successfully killed an Acelo. Good job.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, so like as you can see, I basically 1v1'd on a cello with like 3 destroyers. Like this is like half a Nico's fleet versus like about 2/3, 3/4 of mine. And this is like not even in like the primary role these destroyers are like doing each match. Like basically just full on jousting in a cello. My destroyers won the fight with like moderate damage to one of the destroyers. And that's basically 1,500 points down the drain on the OSP side. And now I'm able to like retask my railguns and shoot something else.
It
So
can also be noted, don't doubt the power of railguns to disable a ship, because if you have a ship that has to seek cover and then do repairs, that ship's value is now essentially out of the fight unless it's indirect fire, which it shouldn't be getting railed anyways, but that's besides the point. If you are able to keep the enemy team suppressed and holding themselves behind rocks and not pushing angles or otherwise operating, you are doing your job as a rail fleet. Do not make the mistake of judging rails as bad because they don't have big damage number like you might see from container liners or size 3 hybrids or whatever at the end of a match. It is infuriating to play against a good rail player who knows how to keep you suppressed and unable to move around the map.
yeah, exactly. And it's worth noting that the after action report doesn't keep track of fire damage, so all the damage you deal with fires like doesn't get tracked by the game. So you actually deal a lot of invisible damage with railguns. Um, like like after the game, like the amount of damage that a solo took, uh, like a lot of that's going to be fire damage. Like I would say like half the damage that a solo took that I killed was probably fire damage.
So you
So
have to
yeah.
think of the number of DC teams. Like, take the Accelerator I've currently got. It's got 8 DC teams on it. Of these DC teams, I have more than 8 modules. And if everything is on fire, I'm going to be receiving constant damage ticks across the entire ship that I just cannot fix. So literally everything except for the essentials I prioritize is going to burn down.
And as a big ticket capital ship loses like buff modules like ammo elevators, mount gyros, what have you, that ship's DPS goes like down through the floor. So even if they manage to recover after getting railed, if all of their buff modules are knocked out, they're way less powerful than they were before. And so like you can basically neuter threats before they even get into the fight with railguns sometimes. And say if I had like an Axford buddy, like an ally of mine on my team with an Axford that was like dueling in a solo bow on, if I start railgunning that Acello, all of a sudden that Acello like has debuff to its guns, so it can't shoot your Axford friend as effectively anymore. It has fires inside of it. It's slowly taking damage and being burned down. That Acello is going to lose the fight eventually, and your Axford buddy is going to be able to finish it off, even if it would normally lose the fight just by nature of being orbit dodged against and not being able to hit the Acello. So you can basically win the fight for your ally with railguns. All right. I think that shows like a pretty good like practical usage of railguns. Like oh, hey.
I
Oh.
lived.
So
Now, this
I-
is what you don't want to have happen. If an enemy ship gets within range and you have broadside presented, you are going to be struggling because a lot of your ship is meant to just point the nose at the enemy and stay out of range.
Yep. Like I said,
Whereas, mind you, in a real game, you're probably not going to get an Acello within 3 kilometers of your rail fleet unless something seriously funny has happened. But
yeah. Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, keystones in general, they can dish out the damage, but they can't take it. So like after like just a few like 2 or 3 volleys of 450, like this destroyer is basically already on its last legs. Versus like being able to duel an entire Acello before and kill it. Solely because I saw the enemy Acello coming at me. I started railgunning it as it came into 450 range, and I basically used the evade command to evade fire while shooting with the railguns and then closing with the 250s to finish it off. So it's like a world of difference being able to like see targets coming and disable them before they get close enough to start hitting you, and then being able to finish off the enemy on your terms.
This is also just generally good advice for all ships that aren't beams. You usually want to engage enemies on your terms. So if you're a 450, like Battleship, Axford, or Acello, you should be looking to engage people within your locking range, which is usually with a bullseye is what, 7 kilometers? Something like that.
9 kilometers.
Bullseye's 9
Nine?
kilometers.
9,
You can
yeah.
technically lock at like 9.5 with a parallax, but that's unreliable.
Yeah, so around 9 kilometers, you should be ambushing people around 9 kilometers, not engaging before that, as you could get either railgunned, missiled, any number of things. You want to engage people on the terms that you are going to be most accurate on. If you're using 250s, you want to get closer, lock them within your weapon range, and then moving forward. But with beams, you just have to get as close as you can without getting spotted.
Yeah, basically.
The best general advice to give just for any game is you always want to be taking an unfair fight, and you want that fight to be unfair in your advantage.
Yeah, like destroyers are like, like bandit marauders that they never want to take a fair fight. They always want to, like take on alone undefended ships and just take them out.
You're essentially functioning as a long-range wolf pack in this case, where you get multiple destroyers together. One destroyer is an annoyance. Multiple destroyers is just crippling, as we saw with Mycel is just kind of cooking off there.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of these, compared to other games, think of them like a tank destroyer. You've got very light armor, but in the forward-facing direction, you are incredibly powerful at killing enemy ships. You just have to play it very carefully because, again, the destroyer is, despite having some armor, still pretty light.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah. Let's see. How do we want to end this, Nico?
Well, I'm probably going to cook off in like a minute 30. Is there any questions from the floor that we want to ask and answer?
I don't see any questions in the chat right now. I can scroll up to see.
Is
Okay.
it true that you, Pyrope, are a walking Ruby reference?
Yes, this is true. Guilty as charged. Like, it's my favorite show. What do you want? Like,
Don't worry. I have my fair share of Ruby references in my fleet.
yeah, like if you look at the TF Redwood that's in the game now, like, all 3 DDs are references to like, Ruby and like basically one of the locations in the show. And
Anime
then
girls in my Nebulous Fleet Command?
yeah, like
More
even,
likely than you'd think.
yeah, right.
Bannable.
Yeah, even the like scouts here, the Red Scythe anti-clipper is a reference to Ruby as well.
Mash Driver Gaming very soon. Explanations on those. Mash Drivers are funny.
Yeah, well,
Make me want to die. As
Yeah,
I
We could cover a little about Mass Drivers. They're, in terms of range bracket, they're similar to Rails, and we talked about them a little bit tonight, but they function differently than Rails. Rails are about
yeah.
critical hits and debuffing the enemy, versus Mass Drivers, you're essentially lobbing a, like, what, size 2 every shot or so?
Something like that. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I'll definitely talk about I'll talk about mesh drivers here in a second. I just want to show like 1 or 2 more things in the fleet editor about railguns, and then we'll go on to mesh drivers. Sound good?
All right, we done in this match then?
I think so. Are you gonna explode?
No, I managed to fix the crit. I was very surprised. It came down
Oh.
pretty close.
That's good. Well, I ran out of rail savo, so.
Also, if you're getting shot by railguns and you manage to get into cover, but you still have a reactor overload and another crit, you can just shut down your reactor. So that way your DC teams can focus on the other critical that you cannot deal with as easily.
Yeah, that's the emergency reactor shutdown button. You gotta hold it in for 3 seconds. And then it takes 30 seconds to happen, so you need like 33 seconds to stop a reactor critical overload.
There is a way to get around that, I will say, which is
Oh.
when you press the button and hit emergency reactor shutdown. If you hit space twice and go into tactical view, it instantly does it. I don't know if that's a bug that's getting fixed or if that's a feature or what, but
Oh, weird. Yeah, that
it's
sounds like a bug.
feature right now, so don't question it. Just hold down confirm, and there you go. Boom.
So that is a very important thing if you're getting shot by railguns and you manage to get out of their line of sight, and you have multiple like catastrophes happening. You should probably do that, or else that is just going to be the end of your ship.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your DC teams, like with a negative 68% work speed modifier, they're not going to repair the crit in time. Just accept you're going to burn a restore and hit that reactor shutdown and scram.
Yep, because the other two catastrophes you can maybe come back from. Reactor overload, you will never be coming back from that.
Yeah, you'll be coming back as a ghost. Oh, hey, look, a fuel line fire.
Also, nice way to identify if a fuel line fire is happening. Neko, can you kindly show the side of your ship that's having it, like visually, for
yes,
if you
can
get
see
within
the flare coming out.
Yep. If you can somehow see the ship and you see a fire like that on it, as the railgun player, you know there's a fuel line fire happening. Just keep shooting. Doesn't matter if you see it. It means that you're doing your job well.
Yep. Yeah, fuel line fires are very deadly. And they will kill ships dead.
Connection
Mhm.
destroyed.
Fuel line fire is also very pretty.
Oh yeah, it's all purple.
If you've ever wondered why your ship blows up like all along the length of it and turns purple, that was a fuel line fire.
Yeah.
Yep. You're probably never going to get a magazine explosion. They're kind of rare to happen, and your DC teams are almost always on it. But when they do happen, they're a little spooky.
You'll see a huge jet of sparks fly out of the part of the ship that's closest to where the mag is.
And then you'll see a big little kaboom after that.
Opponent destroyed.
Notably, reactor overloads don't have any visible signs, so ships will just randomly explode.
Speaking of fuel line fires, we're about to watch one now.
Oh,
Disabled.
pretty.
Quite pretty. Fuel line fires, if they ever happen, are usually just instant death sentences. Like
They
that.
are technically survivable, but it's not reliable to survive that. If you got a fuel line fire, you need to get that fixed.
Yeah.
Yep. A priority for getting fixed are reactor overloads, fuel line fires, then magazine explosions. Magazine explosions are the one that you can survive the most reliably from.
So yeah. Let's see here. Let me do some mental math here. Yeah. So like these Acellos, like they burned down and took a bunch of damage. Like see, like I did like over 5,000 damage with like just the railgun, but that's just with like hitting and having 108% accuracy. And the reason that's 108% is because if a rail sabo overpens through the ship and then hits the same ship again, it counts as 2 hits. So if I shoot an Acello and I basically like ram a rail sabo through its bow, comes out the top of the ship and goes through that tower on top of the Acello, that counts as 2 hits. So, and it'll do damage twice. So yeah. Like, yeah, like, you love to see these kind of numbers with railguns.
Yeah. So you can think of rails. They're a weapon system you have to respect, but they can be countered. We've covered a couple of the counters, either flanking and attacking them because a destroyer can only move so fast, counterplay with certain missile types. Then again, missiles is rock, paper, scissors with a whole bunch of other bells and whistles involved. So it is a strong tool that you have to consider. Don't just write someone off because you're like, oh, it's just a rail array, whatever. This is a new player with a new player fleet or something. They can kill you, as we have just seen here.
Also, just be careful what map you're playing on. Like, you don't want to really bring a rail array to, what is it? The very
Tumbleweed?
close. Yeah, you don't want to bring a rail array to Tumbleweed. That is, Tumbleweed is not the map for railguns.
You'd be much better suited to bring a rail array to large maps like Nyx's Eye or something with a long sight line like Arroya or Aorta. Those are all popular rail maps where you can set up and command a large amount of battle space.
Yeah, generally speaking, I would agree. I have taken railguns on Tumbleweed before because there are a few firing lanes where you can make use of your range, but generally speaking, yeah.
Generally speaking, you're not going to be as effective as you would have been on another map, as there's now less sight lines for you to hold, and more cover for your enemies to use to get out of the line of sight.
Yeah, basically. Alright, so the last thing I want to show in the fleet editor here before we move on to mass drivers is these stats for the railguns. I especially want to talk about the spread. So as you can see, the spinal railgun on a Keystone has a base spread of 23 meters at 10 kilometers. Now, I have here a little handy-dandy wiki, the Nebulous wiki, where it shows the size, length, width, and height of different ships in the game. So if you look at, like, say, a shuttle, the smallest ship in the game, the shuttle is 68 meters long by 36 meters wide by 23 meters high. So with 23 meters of spread at 10 kilometers, your railgun will basically spread like the entire height of the shuttle. And the way in Nebulous it works when you shoot at an enemy ship is that it will choose an aim point on that ship, basically like one of like an armful of points to aim the shell directly at. So that can be like, like where the CIC is on the shuttle, or like where the drive is, or like, the middle of the shuttle. Like there's a bunch of different places. So say it tries to shoot the front half of the shuttle where the CIC is, and this 23 meters of spread can basically make it go over the shuttle or under the shuttle. Even with like a bullseye lock, you actually only have like a 50% chance of hitting a shuttle with like an unbuffed railgun with that kind of spread. But if you put in like a gun plotting center, just one is all you need, because that buffs up the spread to like 18. That's the 250 derp. 16 meters at 10 kilometers. Yeah, so you go from 23 meters to 16 meters at 10 kilometers. And so you've gone from like a 50% chance to hit a bullseye locked shuttle to like a 75% chance to hit a bullseye locked shuttle. So fixing the spread on your railguns with like just a single GPC per ship can really make your railguns a lot more accurate. And this holds true for like shooting shuttles, tugboats, but even like cargo feeders and Ocellos, because Ocellos have, if they're like bow tanking you, it's really easy for the spread to just like miss the aim point. And if they pick like an aim point that's like on like the edge of the ship, like the antenna or like, one of the mounts or something, then just a little bit of spread, a little bit in too wrong of a direction can make the railgun miss, even with a bullseye lock. And if the ship you're shooting is moving, because you're basically always going to be shooting moving targets in this game, tightening the spread makes it a lot easier to hit moving targets as well, up to a point. Yeah, I always put like a gun plotting center in my railgun ships if I can help it. It makes it like, 25 to 50% more shots on target. It helps a lot. And then as for the Mark 81, let me show you this fleet I have here. This is an Axford I have with a railgun on the back. I basically use this Axford to broadside at long range. The railgun will knock out the thrusters on like Ocellos and start taxing their DC teams to open them up for the 450s, even at like 10, 11 kilometers. And then in this destroyer that I have escorting it, I have the spyglass that allows me to basically see the enemy Ocellos first and start railgunning them before they even see me. And I can basically lock down an enemy Ocello and then finish them off with the 450s. Yeah, so basically you want to use railguns on capital ships as secondary weapons and supplemental weapons to synergize with like cannons. That's why I only have like one E-reg in this Axford, because I don't really want to buff up that railgun very much, because it doesn't get as much from like buffing it up as say like Keystone does. So you want to definitely focus on buffing up your cannons when you have an Axford like this. And mount gyros are especially crucial for railgun turrets, because one of the benefits of railguns, railgun turrets specifically, and this handy dandy infographic that Cake made, is that they are able to get on target a lot faster. They're more responsive thanks to the turreted mount. So you can get a railgun onto a target on a capital ship a lot faster than you can a Keystone. And putting mount gyros on your Axford or Solomon like buffs up that strength that the railgun turret has. Makes it so it's even better at its job of like rapidly responding to and engaging threats that come into your radar range, so that you can pick them up with your 450s. So yeah. As for like how to build a battleship with like a supplemental railgun, this battleship of mine has a railgun in the class 4 mount, and that's really all you need. You definitely don't want to like have like, you know, 3 railguns and one 450. You just need like 1 or 2 railgun turrets to supplement your 450s, and just enable your 450s to do their job. Yeah. Okay, so let me check what time it is. Okay.
We've been about what, hour 20 into this?
Okay. Yeah, I still got some time left. Alright.
Real quick, sorry. I need to go for the moment. Can you, Pyrope, just right-click on someone and confirm that you can see server mute and server deaf in there?
Sure. Okay.
Okay, great. It works.
Confirm's
Yep.
enabled.
I just gave the permission to do that to priority speaker in this channel. All right, cool. Yeah. Good luck with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you.
See y'all later.
See ya.
All right, let's talk about some mass drivers then, shall we?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the first thing to talk about with mass drivers, if you look at the mass driver here, on the wiki, we can see in the description for the fracturing block that these mass driver rounds produce like basically an angled explosion akin to a missile warhead on impact. So I have it right here in my notes that mass drivers deal damage in fragments of 33. So while it says a mass driver round does 400 damage, that's broken up into like 33 damage chunks. So mass drivers can only break DT on things that 33 damage can defeat. And unlike railguns, mass drivers also don't ignore DR. So that's why mass drivers won't gray out thrusters on an Axford or Solomon. Mass drivers can red out the thrusters and put them to 0%, but you can't actually gray out the thrusters on a Axford or Solomon with mass drivers like you can with railguns.
It's also important to note the 33 damage threshold compared to some big ones like the reinforced DC locker of 35. You're only able to kill so many things, not every module on a ship.
Yeah. That being said, mass drivers do a high amount of damage like immediately, versus railguns, which need to stack up the fire damage. Mass drivers just do damage right out of the gate. They will chip down components. They will knock out buff modules. They'll even knock out DC lockers and like radar panels, because importantly, they can break the DT on radar panels. And if you mass driver a ship sufficiently, it will basically be like unable to see anything. All of its buff modules will be knocked out, and a bunch of stuff will be redded out inside of it, along with all of its like non-reinforced DC lockers also knocked out. So you can definitely like disable and degrade a ship with mass drivers. It's hard to like full kill a ship with mass drivers, just because you can't really break DT on very much, but like a ship that gets mass drivered for a while will not be happy. It'll basically be like cored out, except for like its reinforced and high DT components.
It can gray out guns on voxels and lower, and it can also gray out reactors. So
Yep. If you don't have the DR to survive, then yeah. It all comes down to like DT and DR.
Remember that 33 damage threshold that this thing hits you for? If your components have less than that, they're going to be vulnerable. So if you got a Vauxhall with 250s, microreactors, and the like, those are all vulnerable to mass driver fire. So you have to not get shot there. You won't lose your reinforced CIC or your drives or anything like that, but you're going to lose all the other things on your ship. Don't get shot.
Yeah. And now, importantly, mass drivers have an overpenetration multiplier, so you can't actually overpen with mass drivers. And so, like, mass drivers, if they get like a shallow hit on an enemy ship, will do way less damage than they would otherwise. On small ships, you're basically always going to overpen, but that doesn't really matter all that much because you're still doing like 33 damage chunks, and a small ship doesn't really have any DR, so mass drivers are actually really good at dismantling frigates and sprinters and full killing them. However, to kill small ships like that with mass drivers, you need to first get a track, and second, you need to have the spread to hit them. So that's why I've buffed up this mass driver bulker to have like 10 meters of spread at 10 kilometers, 19 meters of spread at 20 kilometers. This allows me to hit a sprinter very reliably, even one that's moving, and I can especially hit, Rain's frigates from far away. And to get those targets, you can either have like a radar monitor, or in my case, a radar bulker because I'm a crazy person. Um, like a
Or even a radar tug. It really depends on
yeah,
what you want to do.
yeah. So like I would say a radar cargo feeder is probably a good middle ground because especially if you're wanting to shoot small ships with a mass driver, because you want to have a buffed up enough track that you can get an accurate shot on those small ships. So with the new monitor, I'll build one really quick. So first things first, you want to have a yard drive so you can get the Bloodhound on target fast. A boosted reactor because this thing is not going to be in the fight. It's going to be back spotting targets. You don't need the Ithaca necessarily because you're going to have some big radars on this thing to see stuff far away. So what I like to do is I like to give the cargo feeder a early warning radar, a little waffle iron here, and then on this final I put the Bloodhound. And this is a lot of power at first, but if you say put in like a plant control center, you can nix the need for more reactors to an extent.
It is also worth noting, in the latest patch, the cargo feeder has just gotten 2 new slots that you could put the track correlators in, so you could potentially stick up to 3 extra reactors in here if you wanted to do that.
Yep.
I have a small question about mass drivers. I don't know if it was covered, but is the new jury-rigged reactor a good idea to put in mass driver ships if you need extra power?
It can be. You can put like jury-rigged reactors into your mass driver ships. However, they are expensive. They're 20 points per, so they're actually less expensive than a plant control center. But
It is worth noting, if I could take this, they are going to be 20 points to get an extra 500 kilowatts. So you have to consider, is this worth more than a plant control center? The jury-rigged reactor, we can go into all the depth about like whether this is new good module or not in good old balanced discussion in that. God forbid. But anyways, it is something you can consider, but it will strictly depend on your build and what other modules you can fit into your ship.
yeah, so like with 2 jury-rigged reactors, and turning one of the gun plotting centers to a plant control center, I'm kind of at where I was before. So if I just put this back, 2 more plant control centers and a gun plotting center, like it's basically the same kind of power output. So it's hard to get jury-rigged reactors to like get you a good return on mass drivers. The main benefit of the JRR, the main benefit of the JRR is to enable double drive LN builds. So stuff like if I have like a chi drive and then like a long haul, on like a 250 LN, like with the new C56, like a 250 LNs like love being double drived. So you can put a jury-rigged reactor on those. However, I will say that the jury-rigged reactor is squishy and prone to going critical. So you would definitely want to be careful with your JRR double drived bulkers and take full advantage of their maneuverability. Because you won't be able to take as much sustained fire as you would have been able to if you had like normal reactors.
So again, use what you think is best for your ships. it is a option, but it's not necessarily the best option. It's going to be strictly up to your discretion for how you want to build your bulkers and for what role. But let's get back to the mass drivers as they were.
Okay, so yeah, building this radar monitor to enable mass drivers. So far, I've got just a boosted reactor and a light civilian reactor with a plant control center, and already I can power both the Bloodhound and the early warning radar at the same time. I can put in some track correlators, and then I can even put in an adaptive radar receiver, and then another track correlator. And so the adaptive radar receiver is huge for Bloodhound ships. Like, I highly, highly recommend having an adaptive radar receiver for any type of early warning radar or Bloodhound ship. This is because the early warning radar buffs up the sensitivity of the radar. And you might not think it, but that little bit of DBM can go a really long way and let you see enemy ships at 1, 2, or even 3 kilometers further away than you could before. Do note that sensitivity falls off at -40 dBm. So you only need one adaptive radar receiver. A single adaptive radar receiver will fully buff any radar in the game, even an Ithaca Bridgemaster. So having more than one ARR, adaptive radar receiver, doesn't do anything. Yeah, so only one adaptive radar receiver. Any more than that is redundant. And so yeah, with 3 track correlators, I've got the Bloodhound down to a 14.8 meter spread. So that means a sprinter, which is like 80 by 37 by 28 meters. A 14 meters positional error means there will only be like a 14 meter error on whatever aim point the ship chooses to shoot at on the sprinter. So the aim point is likely still on the sprinter, even with the error, and with the spread of only like 10 meters at 10 kilometers, you can get hits on sprinters and knock them out from like a mile away, even if they're like flank speeding.
If you'd like, you could also show how to make a EW or Bloodhound tug. They're not as good as the monitor, but if you're focusing more on buffing up the or making your liners more expensive, this also works. It's just not as good.
Keep in mind that you are required to use pretty much all the slots here for plant control centers in order to run both of these at the same time. You won't have DC teams, so if this thing gets hit or does flank damage, that's permanent.
Yeah.
Yep, this thing will die to a stiff breeze.
Yep. So yeah, that being said, something you can do to make it more reasonable to run the setup is if you have just a single plant control center, you can give it some damage control, and you can give it like some buff modules, so like truck correlator, adaptive radar receiver. You don't have enough power to run both at the same time, but even if I drop the plant control center here, yeah, like as long as you like are only running one at a time, you can basically use the ship. So basically what you would do is you would use the early warning radar to find where the enemies are, and then you position fire the Bloodhound at where you saw the enemies with the early warning radar. And then you turn the early warning radar off, the tugboat will rotate, and then once you pick up the enemy with the Bloodhound, you can just track fire the Bloodhound and keep them on track that way.
Yeah,
So
if you don't want to run like a million plant control centers to have them both constantly running.
Yeah, like was previously stated, if you have like nothing but plant control centers, you can do this. Like you can have like one.
The rapid for the birthing.
Oh
but
yeah,
yes,
birthing.
Yeah,
it comes out to like 335 points, I believe.
I have one built. It is 335.
Yeah, this is 350 presumably because I got an AR and a truck correlator and a G drive.
Yeah, it's 335 if you have double like track correlator, or I think track correlators cost the same as.
Truck correlators are slightly less expensive.
Slightly less expensive,
cheaper,
yeah.
But point still stands.
Yeah, G drive. Yeah.
Anyways, that's covering a bit of the intel side of things for when you're trying to do mass drivers. Keep in mind, this also applies to when you're trying to run 450 bulkers at 11 kilometers or such, because similar kind of range bracket.
Yep. And importantly, you can run an intel center on a radar monitor, so you can bring intel for your entire team and cram it into the same ship that's doing like all the spotting with the early warning radar and the bloodhound. So you can make this fulfill multiple roles pretty easily.
605 points. Look out for these in game. They will be hiding around the map, feeding intel. You now have a new missile target.
Yes, if you're a missile player hiding in here, hoping to figure out how to beat those damn railguns that keep killing the rest of your team, and you're playing ANS, shoot these first. These are priority number 1. If you kill these, OSP is blind.
Yeah, mass drivers can't shoot anything if they can't see anything.
Mass drivers won't shoot anything. 450s won't have good locks until they get within, 6 kilometers?
6.5 for the pinpoint.
Yeah, 6.5 kilometers. Acellos will have a harder time figuring out where they need to move if they're supporting the rest of their team. Monitors swarms will have to also get in closer to use their weapons. You blind the OSP if you kill their EWR and Bloodhound monitors and tugs.
Yep. Also, these radar monitors, if you make a radar monitor that does intel, early warning radar, and bloodhound, it's 500 to 600 points, and so if that gets missiled, that's 600 points down the drain. So
Yep.
that's a good chunk of a fleet.
I think we've covered the intel side of things fairly well. Did we want to move on to the mass driver liner itself?
Sure. So the mass driver liner itself, it's actually most efficient to have 3 mass drivers instead of 4. This is due to how the fire rate works with EREGs. As it is now, the max fire rate, I've got 15.27 RPM at 3 mass drivers with 3 EREGs. If I were to try to run a 4th mass driver, first off, mass driver is 4,250 kilowatts just to run one. So let's see. Oh, there's I totally messed up on power, so I need to drop an EREG in order to run a light civilian reactor. And so I've taken out an EREG, put in a mass driver, and that basically puts my fire rate to 15.59 versus 15.27, so I'm only gaining 0.3 RPM by adding the 4th mass driver, and a mass driver is 100 points. You can get a shuttle, you can get an entire shuttle for cheaper than a single mass driver. So there's just no real benefit to having 4 mass drivers on a liner unless you really want that alpha damage, but even then it's not really that useful. So I would definitely recommend just going with 3 mass drivers and 3 EREGs. Where did I put it?
Now that we've got the bulk freighter here to showcase as well, you can see just on the inside of this how many components there are, being reactors, gun plotting centers, and other modules like this. We were talking about this earlier with the effects of railguns on a mass driver ship, and you can see there's plenty of targets here. If you inflict debuffs to power, then a whole bunch of these buffing modules and other things are going to go down.
A single main bus short knocks one of these out for the fight for as long as the main bus short is up.
Yeah, essentially. And also plant control centers. The plant control centers are basically required to run big ticket mass driver liners that can put out a lot of shots downrange. And they only have 10 damage threshold, so railguns can knock these out easily. Yeah. So yeah. Mass drivers hate getting railgunned.
By the way, because of the recent update, instead of taking your reinforced mag, you should probably take a Citadel mag in one of the big slots, as the first magazine is free.
Oh yeah, that is true.
Try out the new stuff, chat. It is very good.
Yeah, and also taking a DCX in place of some of your DC is actually also a pretty good thing. I changed up my mash drivers as of recently to do that, and it's not bad. It just means I have more points to spend on other stuff, as all the DC I had can just be replaced by one DCX
Yeah.
on my end.
Yeah.
So now that we've covered the Intel side of things and the mass driver bulk freighter, is there any questions before we continue? DCX, that's referring to the new module, the Damage Control Complex, because Damage Control Central and Damage Control Complex are both DCC. They've had to differentiate them, so you might hear like DCX more often now.
Damage control complex.
Yep. Also, probably PD is probably something we want to talk for these, as a PD is very important for mash drivers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So for my mash driver liner here, I have these AMMs that I like to use. Have to. There, that works. Anywho, I have these AMMs right here. These AMMs are specifically keyed to S3Hs, but I haven't played this fleet in a while, and I need to introduce my anti-S2 AMMs, but basically to give a quick rundown on anti-hybrid AMMs, you only need a size 1 warhead to kill an S2H, because an S2H only has 25 hit points, and these deal like 33 damage with like a size 1 warhead. So you can make it really tiny and make it like super fast and maneuverable. And also it reduces the cost a lot because EL frag is expensive, and you basically really want EL frag for hybrids. You can bury hybrids in a bunch of like blast frag warheads.
Cheap 2-point blast frag is another way to do it, but those are a different type of AMM.
Yep.
AMM
like,
warfare, again,
probably
missiles,
this way
because
here.
we're getting a little bit off topic. That there is multiple ways to defend your bulk freighters and such. Just you're going to have to adapt to the ever-changing meta that is, rock, paper, scissors, and whatever other toys decide to come out to play.
Yep. So like I could do an entire tutorial on AMMs, but we're doing railguns today, so. There's a lot of different ways to do AMMs. Like, you can ask people for tips. Like, you can ask me about AMMs, and I would love to give you my designs. They're pretty good. Generally speaking, it's most efficient to have one kind of AMM for S2Hs and a different kind of AMM for S3Hs.
One question popping up in the chat here. Do we want to talk about how stacking E-regs works compared to like stacking ammo elevators?
Sure. Oops. All right, so stacking E-regs, it has like diminishing returns like every other buff module in the game. However, you definitely want to like include enough E-regs into your like mash driver ship or railgun ship that you get a good return for like the cost of the ship, because no sense paying all those points for a
ship that's going to die instantly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pyrope, because you've got the DPS mod, you would just want to scroll down to the damage chart there at the bottom of ship stats.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so as we can see here, let's just like start with 0 E-regs and then show what stacking them up to like say 5 or so does. You're probably not going to have power for that, but just to give you all a sense of what it looks like to stack. As you can see here, 25 seconds every shot, and then as we just add on another E-reg, it will turn into
9.
So that's 20%. That's, as we see here, 25% increased RPM, and then if we keep stacking these up, see that's now 62%. Then 3 of them, that's more than doubled your rate of fire already. So just having 3 E-regs is quite good. Go ahead and add a 4th and a 5th just to show off.
Yeah, so each E-reg helps more than the last, and since they're only 30 points a pop, like this is already putting out more mash driver than like 2 unbuffed rail bulkers. Like one bulker with E-regs puts out more mash drivers than 2 of them and is way less points. With the 4th E-reg, it goes to like 166%. So
that's like 1 E-reg giving you 50% more rate of fire right there.
Yeah, so I don't think 4 eggs is achievable with 3 mass
Not really
drivers.
practically. You'll need a lot of plant control, but just for
Let
argument's
me.
sake, like you can do 3 E-Reg fairly reasonably on your mass driver liners.
Try jury. You might be able to do it with a jury rig, maybe if you add one as well, like in one of the bigger slots, maybe. But you're sacrificing a lot, and I personally don't like doing 4. It's like, yeah, you're sacrificing way too much for this.
Yeah, like you don't have damage control anymore.
Yeah, you have no damage control. Like it's essentially very much diminishing returns at this point, as you're now not surviving, like basically at all.
Yeah, yeah, and like that's like all that power just to run like 3 mass drivers and 4 eggs. The flak turrets that I have on here are only taking like 200 power combined, roughly, maybe a little bit more. So yeah, like 3 eggs is about the cap for a mass driver bulker.
3
If
will
you
be your
have 3 mass
standard,
drivers.
similar to ammo elevators. 4 if you can, but it does come with some risks. And if we
Yeah.
could, 5 is hilarious because it gives you like 250% rate of fire, but I don't think that's achievable.
It's
Yeah.
like trying to get like 4 FPAs into a beam destroyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like theoretically, if you replaced everything with eggs, yeah, like plus 238%. Yeah. So yeah, stacking eggs is good. There's diminishing returns, but they don't really start to diminish until like after the 4th egg. So like if you can get like 3 eggs, that's about as good as you can get for like a dedicated mesh driver bulker. For like a monitor, like let me see. How many eggs can we cram into a monitor these days? Let's see. If we do the boosted reactor, take out the radar. We don't need that where we're going. Do Ereg. And we can definitely get there with like a plant control center too. I can even fit like some small eggs, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so we can get like a super buffed up monitor. But that's a plus 162% rate of fire because the increased rate of fire like basically, you know, stacks with the amount of mesh drivers you have on the ship. So like with like 3 or I guess it'd be 4 eggs here, but yeah, I've got like a pretty high fire rate like for like the point cost overall with the mesh driver bulker as opposed to the mesh driver monitor. You can definitely do a mesh driver monitor, but like if I have like 3 of these to have like 3 mesh drivers, that's like more than the cost of my mesh driver bulker. So you get more holes and you get more armor, but it's more expensive. You can technically put more mesh drivers downrange with like super buffed up monitors, but you don't get like as many of the goodies as you can cram into like a bulker. And yeah. So yeah, I'd say mesh driver MNs are good to like splash into a fleet. Mesh driver bulker is like what you want to use if you're like focusing on mesh drivers for a fleet. You could do a mesh driver based monitor fleet if you had like a spotter, but like all of your points are going to go into like the mesh drivers if you want to get like as much or more fire rate than you could with like a mesh driver bulker. And in this fleet, I have like capping shuttles to help out with caps as well. So yeah. Let's see. Does anyone have any other questions? Anything else that I can answer?
Just see if the chat gives it a second here. I believe that we covered mass drivers in depth along with the Intel game. How early into the fight do you start using mass drivers from ACAP Needs a Hug?
I I try to find targets as quick as I can for my mass drivers. Like when I'm playing this fleet, I'm immediately like sweeping my early warning radar all around, trying to find things to shine my bloodhound at. Like if I'm on Nyx's Eye, I try to deploy in a place from the beginning of the game to where I can keep an eye on A and try to get that very first sprinter that goes for it. It doesn't happen every game, but sometimes I can just mash driver that very first sprinter that goes on to A and just get a cap advantage for my team like right away.
I will also build off that a little bit. The same as with rails, you want to fire on a ship that is the furthest outside cover. It can be worth it sometimes firing immediately as someone pokes their head out and you just take that off because they decided to just disrespect your sight lines. But if you let the enemy fleet push out a little bit into your early warning radar and bloodhound range, you can then pepper something enough to get guaranteed kills on it rather than just poking it and making it return to cover. So you have to decide when it is best to be patient and when it is best to immediately fire. That's strictly going to be a game sense thing, and there's too many circumstances for us to give you a complete rule about whether to shoot or not. It's going to
Yeah,
be your decision at the end of the day.
yeah. Like ideally you want to catch out enemy ships so that your allies can go in and finish them off. Same with railguns. But you can also just like shoot and permanently damage enemy ships and force them to go behind cover.
Don't forget that firing these also gives you massive radar signature. So if you are in range, you will be seen, even if you had a previously pretty small radar return.
Yep. Oh, that's another thing I should mention is that radars like the parallax and I think the bullseye can do this now too. Um, if you have a massive signature bloom from shooting mass drivers or railguns, a parallax or bullseye can lock you from further beyond its max range. Like you can be locked from beyond max range on parallaxes and bullseyes if you have a massive signature bloom. So like don't be surprised if you get locked from like 10 to 11 kilometers away by a parallax on your mass driver bulker. So you really got to be careful because if you are seen, you can most likely be locked and they can shoot you if they're close enough. That being said, if you're far enough away, you can simply cease fire and the signature bloom debuff will go away after a bit and they won't be able to lock you from beyond max range anymore. You'll disappear off their sensors if they're not in range to see you normally.
Also, to add on to this, this goes for both rails and mass drivers. As soon as you fire one shot across the battle space, you have telegraphed to everyone that you are on the map. Same rule goes as like if you're a container liner and you just send off like a dozen boxes somewhere, you are now a threat that is registered. So be sure to play patiently, but don't hold on for too long. And you have to remember that once your railguns have been fired, people can see where that trail came from, and then they can send counter battery your way, even if they don't have track on you. So
Yep. Um, I wanna, one thing I wanna say really quick is that you can have a mash driver monitor fleet that's like basically battle drivers. Like if you were to put like a mash driver on like the nose here, and then like you could put like T30s on one, and then like have a different one with like some like plasma on it. You could basically do the same thing I do with my Four Maidens fleet as OSP. The only difference would be that instead of a correlated spyglass, you'd either have like a correlated huntress or like a more likely a bloodhound tug or monitor to help out. So yeah, like yeah, battle snipers are a thing. You basically engage early on with your sniper weapon to disable and degrade a target, and then you close in with your other guns and finish them off. Yeah, so there's different ways to do it. Mhm. All right. I think that just about sums up everything. What do you think,
any
Nico?
questions before we kind of wrap up this little tutorial night? Power Kid asking, does having more anime references in a fleet add strength additively or multiplicatively?
I'd say multiplicatively. Like a few is pretty good, but it gets old if you have too many of like the same reference. See, you gotta change it up. Gotta be creative. But yeah, enemy references are power. Use
From
them.
End Balance, what are your best tips for handling enemy team counter railfire?
Handling enemy team counter rail fire, you basically need to figure out what's spotting you and either get rid of the spotter or mask away from it. If you can't do that, then at least mask away from the enemy snipers. If you know about where the snipers are in the battle space, you can just stay behind cover and use paths through the map that keep you masked from the enemy snipers. It basically like turns into like trench warfare at that point, where you just want to sneak around the map without getting mass drivered or railgunned and just play around cover. That's my biggest advice, is playing around cover.
One trick you can do just handily is when you see railfire coming towards you, even if you don't have them on radar, just use the marker tools to put like a warning or attack marker roughly about where you think they're firing from. You can see the gunshots and get a pretty good rough estimation there. Once you have that marker, it stays for like 5 minutes, and you can then use that to try and position your fleet where you think you'll be in cover and not be able to be shot.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, you can definitely like do missiles and rails in the same fleet. Actually, I have a fleet I can show you really quick. It's kind of a silly fleet, but it works.
Goofy little guy fleet.
Yeah, basically. Where'd I put him? Ah, here we go. So in this little dorky fleet, I have 2 rail DDs with a whole bunch of S2s in them. And unlike normal rail DDs, these have a bunch of programming bus arrays. So I can fire like 20 S2s at a time and basically pretend I'm OSP. It's great.
You can note that you are paying for the destroyer hull. You can do stuff besides just use the spinal mount on it.
Yep, that's true. You know, I just like
They're
stop
asking to see the missile design, by the way.
Oh, sure. I got Spax and Wax here, just a ARAD act and act wake validated. Firing these in a mix salvo is a pretty standard way to try and deal with soft kill. You can still be soft killed, of course, but it's harder. This is usually what I go for like cheap missile combinations. And these have enough boom to get through even new monitor armor. So like size 4 S2 warhead. Another way to do this would be with hybrids, of course. I think I have a cap fleet that makes use of such a DD. Yep, here we go. Yeah, so in this cap fleet, I have a bunch of sprinters for capping objectives, and then I have like a single rail DD that can like support my team, and then also shoot like S2Hs to kill like shuttles and tugboats and things. So
It has
this
a
is
intel center too, I believe.
Yep, and an intel center. Destroyers are great candidates for intel centers because the hull is cheap. It's the cheapest hull you can put an intel center in, and so you just put that in there and help your team that way. So yeah, there's ways to do it. Like you could probably do 2 or even 3 of these, and then still have enough points left over for like a spotter or 2. So yeah, you can definitely combine rails and missiles. I would recommend having like at least 1 programming bus or bus array.
Yeah. The important thing to remember for Rails and Mass Drivers alike is that you are not a frontline fleet, you're a support fleet. It's your job to be multiplicative off of your frontline fleets doing their gun stuff, because you can inflict a lot of nasty debuffs or disabling shots onto enemy ships and have locks provided, but you do not want to be the one up front tanking the hits. So
Yep,
inspire
exactly.
and help out your allies with your fleet. That's your job.
Yep, and you should still be proactive with the rail fleet. You want to find targets on your own terms, like your own spotters, and you want to rail those ships to like open up opportunities for your allies. You can create opportunities for your allies. You don't have to wait for your allies to create opportunities for you. And honestly, you shouldn't. you should be able to find your own opportunities and capitalize on them.
And remember, always talk in either voice chat if they're in there or in text chat. Talking is important.
Yes, communication is literally overpowered. I've been telling Mazer that we just need to nerf this thing. We need to get rid of the Discord. People are communicating and it's overpowered. It's making me lose.
Yeah, that being said, you know, like there's a difference between communicating and being obnoxious, so
Yep.
just be courteous to your fellow players. You know what? That's probably the best way to communicate. Yeah, like can you put emoticons in chat, like or
You can
emojis?
name missiles and ships emojis, if I remember right.
True.
I don't know which one of you hit me with smiley face emojis one night, but I've got a
Yeah.
grudge against you.
Oh, I've seen those missiles. I don't like those.
Yeah, I can put like a little. There's got to be some way to do it, I'm sure. But yeah. Thank you for coming to my Railgun tutorial. I hope everyone learned a lot and feel a bit more confident about both using mesh drivers and railguns and working with railguns and mesh drivers on your team. They used well, and when worked with, they can be a powerful asset. So yeah, go out there and be snipers. And
And to all the missile players, never launch missiles at mash drivers or railguns. Never do it. Don't do it. It's a trap.
Yeah, totally. You
Do not do it.
You wouldn't want to make a sniper cry, would you?
No. They're not that worth it. No. You should save your missiles for like the battleships, you know, and the capitals
you
and
need to
frontline
shoot
fleets.
down the container decoy. You know, the one that says liner, and that one. That's a real threat.
Yeah, you should shoot at active decoys and decoy containers.
Huh. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna hop off for now. But thanks everyone. Have a wonderful night. Yeah, I was like actually pleasantly surprised. This is a lot of fun. Like yeah, I'll do this again sometime, probably for like AMMs or something. All right. Have a good night, guys.
All right, you've all heard the lecture. You all know what to do. Load up a lobby right now. Get railing each other. Go to it.
Yeah.
20 people in this chat. You'll get a lobby. I know it's gonna take 40 minutes still, but you'll get a lobby eventually.
5v5 with rails only.
Rails only on Arroyo.
Rails only on Arroyo. No radars.
Yeah, it's like 1v1s on Rust, but not.